Well, have I got a treat for you today? This is Gregorio Lavilla's championship winning F06, 07, 999 RS. Now, they made 8 of these in 2006, if I'm not wrong. They didn't build any normal RS 999s, they only built some F06s for Bayliss and so on to use in the World Superbikes. Now, some of these bikes actually got put down to BSB, and they were run in the Airwaves team at GSE, and these were full factory machines, not customer machines. They were full factory machines. Ducati used to send over somebody from Italy every time these bikes went out to oversee them. They reputedly are actually higher than the factory spec. There's various bits and bobs on these bikes. The front forks, for example, these are a very special set of Öhlins forks which have got rifled internals. I believe in 2006 they were £35,000 for the pair. It also runs a MotoGP spec rear shock with a nitrided shaft and all sorts of little bits and bobs. This is the absolute pinnacle of V-twin Ducatis. This was when it was a blank check racing and the rules were very much open. I've talked about 999 RSs before. I find them very exciting. Ducati had to work so hard with these bikes because they had no CC advantage that they literally threw the kitchen sink at them. And this is, without question, a 2-cylinder MotoGP bike. They had everything on them. This uses the same electronics as the MotoGP bikes. It's got a Morelli Marvel on board. It's got traction control. It's actually got a variable idle system on it too, which most people didn't think came till sort of 2010 odd. I've got an F10 Carlos Checker bike, and that's got a variable idle system on with a Marvel and stuff, which was quite common practice at that point. But at this point, this was a cutting edge, and the electronics on these were so complicated. Like I say, they actually sent a guy over from Italy every time these bikes went out to oversee the electronics. They had everything. Excuse me. They even ran a high pressure water system on them to try and keep them cool. Now, obviously, they've got all the electronics. They've got the sort of the highest spec motor they possibly could. In qualifying, they'd run these to 14,750, and they'd be producing about 200 brake horsepower, which 2006, 2007, I mean, that was monstrous. Leon Haslam and Gregorio Lavilla sort of ran away with BSB at this point. I remember going to Cadwell Park and watching the two of them just clear off from the rest of the pack. Well, it doesn't happen in BSB these days. And I think this bike, I did have the figures written down. I think it's won 14 races. It's had 20 odd podiums and holds 12 lap records. And so it was in a different league at the time. And obviously 2006, Greg won the championship. 2007, I think he was second on. But what's lovely about this machine is that at the end of the season, it went straight into a private collector's hands, and it's been there ever since. So it didn't fall down the ranks like they often do. So quite often with bikes like this, they'll go to a privateer team or another team, and they'll get run for another couple of seasons. They'll get hammered to death on a small budget team, and then they go to a collector or something. This actually went straight from the team to a friend of mine, a collector, and he's had it ever since. So this is the original bodywork, the original everything, as Greg stepped off the bike. Now, also what's quite interesting about this is actually bike number 2, known as GL2. And this is the bike that Greg did all the winning on. We've got all the data logging and all the systems and all the paperwork and all the setup data and everything from the whole season. And you can see what bike he ran and what setup he ran and what and he preferred number 2. And so he barely actually sat on number 1. And this is the bike that did all the winning and holds all the lap records and all the stuff. And so this was the favoured bike. It's quite unusual. Normally it's number 1, but in this case it was number 2. This has also got a frame number, which is very crucial, because a lot of the bikes didn't and don't. And so this has got a proper factory frame number on. And what is super, super crazy about this bike is we've got the leathers, we've got the helmet, we've got the boots, we've got the gloves, we've got jackets, shirts, mats, this, that, the other. It's got the laptop with all the electronics, all the data, all the stuff. It's got all the paperwork with it. It's got everything you could ever imagine from the sort of end of the season with the bike. And so it's the most complete package and the most untouched bike I've ever seen. And it is one of the most sort of winningest bikes ever. And yeah, he's absolutely crazy. I just think it's, I think as far as collectors Ducatis go, and certainly outside of a sort of factory machine, so an ex-Bayliss bike or a Zaus or whoever, you're not going to get better than this. It's absolutely, it's a factory bike, it's an FO, and it is as it ran, with all the verification, all the memorabilia, all of the stuff, absolutely perfect. I mean, this is an unrepeatable offer. So absolutely delighted to have it here in the shop, because for me, like I say, this is without question the most advanced V-twin that Ducati built. Certainly the one that they had to do the most work on relative to the sort of period in time. So they absolutely threw the kitchen sink at this. It is a phenomenal machine in ridiculous condition, in the sense that it's untouched, with all the paperwork and all the stuff and all the bits with it. Has to be one of the favourite bikes I've ever had in here at the shop. I think the livery's fantastic. I think the bike's fantastic. I think the technology in this and all the bits and stuff, it's just literally, it's as good as it gets. From this point onwards, bikes started to get diluted. They had to have the original airbox, they had to have this, they had to have that, and then the World Superbike rulings actually moved them closer to a super stock bike than a super bike like this. This is silhouette blank check racing. From this point onwards, they got diluted into more production-based machines, and so this is just superb, absolutely superb. It's got, like I say, it's got all the electronic stuff with it. It's got the laptop, the leads, the software, the this, the that, the other. It's got all the maps. It's got all the data logging. It's got everything in it. You could run this if you wanted to, somewhere like Goodwood or whatever, would be delighted to have it. Yeah, it's as good as it gets for collectors Ducatis, I think. What an absolute beauty.